Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Absolute Resonance Part 6 based on novel. So let's start. The top of the tree of resonant power was clustered with numerous large and sturdy branches that were clumped together, forming a wooden platform. A gaze coming from the top of the wooden platform had arced down, staring right at where Li Luo was sitting. This Li Luo disappeared for a week and seems to have come back to school. Xia Qing'e had her arms around her waist, her close-fitting school uniform snugly wrapped around her figure. That body combined with her cute, charming face and snow-white skin, it was no surprise she was the object of many youths' affection. She continued to stare at Li Luo's silhouette, lightly pouting her lips. Is he trying to avoid Baekuan and hiding himself away? It's such a pity. He's so dreamy and handsome. Beside her, a group of her fellow sisters sighed in regret as they ogled at him. Hee, little lass, I can still remember when Li Luo was still in the first school. You were his biggest fangirl, another one of them mocked. The girl who had been laughed at had her face turned beet red, quickly retorting, please. It's not like you girls weren't smitten by him as well. The gaggle of girls continued to laugh, their gazes possessing a trace of pity. The Li Luo of the past was an untouchable and incomparable existence within the first school. Not only was he handsome, but his comprehension abilities were top tier. To add the cherry on top, he was the scion of House Loulan when it was in its heyday, a house with two dukes, a behemoth unto itself. Looks, talent, and a wonderful background. Just what sort of girl wouldn't fall for him? It was just a pity that with the turning of time, Li Luo's luster had gradually faded. First, his parents had disappeared, and House Loulan took a huge blow as a result. Then he was blessed with a blank palace, further knocking him off his pedestal. Thus, the once influential figure of the first school had been relegated to the second school. At this point, fangirling over him blindly was no longer as appropriate as before. Xia Qing'e listened to the chattering of her fellow friends before shaking her head in disgust. Just a group of superficial wenches. Meanwhile, Li Luo had just managed to sit atop a silver leaf when he heard a commotion in the vicinity around him. Turning around to look, the dreaded Baekuan was stomping over towards him, surrounded by a group of his lackeys. Baekuan was built tall and strong with a fair face. The only thing that detracted from him was his overcast pupils, giving him a gloomy vibe. I thought you were never coming back to school, Li Luo. Baekuan stared at Li Luo with a smile that was not a smile. Li Luo batted him a look. He simply couldn't be bothered to answer. His nonchalant attitude infuriated Baekuan. When House Loulan was at its prime, he would often fawn over Li Luo and be answered with that very same attitude. He wouldn't have dared to do anything then, but what about now? Just who did Li Luo think he was now? I spent an entire day waiting for you at Tower Qingfeng. Pray tell, how should we settle this? Baekuan spoke with clenched teeth. Hey! Don't blame me if you're dumb. Please keep your stupidity to yourself. What sort of mentally deficient fool would actually think that I would go to Tower Qingfeng just because they wanted me to? Baekuan's gloomy eyes seemed to have become even more despondent as he replied, the audacity of you. I will let you off if you apologize right now. Otherwise. Li Luo waved his hand like shooing a fly. Scram. The other students who were witnessing this altercation started to laugh. This Baekuan could be considered a tyrant within Southwind Academy, often finding others to bully. It was a pity for him that Li Luo had not chosen to give in. Baekuan glared at Li Luo, immediately threatening, such a hard ass. Do you dare to spar with me to back up your words? Li Luo shook his head. Uninterested. This Baekuan was just too dense. The him of the past didn't want to bother with Baekuan, and nothing had changed since then. If he accepted every provocation, wouldn't he be no different from Baekuan? Baekuan gave a cold smile. He did not continue speaking but signaled to his goons. It was as though they had rehearsed their part in a play, immediately announcing, are all the people of the second school such scaredy cats? After which, even more taunts and jibes followed from the group. The people of the second school who were nearby started to seethe with anger. Unfortunately, Baekuan's savage reputation preceded him, so most of them did not dare to even let out a squeak. Li Luo, you wouldn't want your problem to implicate the entire second school, would you? Baekuan asked ominously. Obviously, this blockhead was a little scheming, clearly trying to rile the emotions of the other students. These other students may not dare to take the issue up with Baekuan directly, but they would definitely apply some pressure onto Li Luo to settle things. All of you shut up. At this very point, a furious roar echoed as Jiang Qing'e strode over. Angrily staring at Baekuan, he challenged him. If you want to fight, I'll give you a fight. It's you. Baekuan frowned. It looks like the beating I gave you the last time was insufficient, Jiang Qing'e retorted. Yet before he could finish his sentence, he was dragged away by Li Luo. Why are you messing around with dog poop? Stop degrading yourself, Li Luo drawled. At this point, he scowled at Baekuan and his group of friends before sighing. Help me take note of all those that are here. I will get someone to violently teach them a lesson in peaceful coexistence once I go back. Although House Loulan was still riddled with trouble, it was still one of the 5 great houses of the Xia Kingdom. The old manor had numerous protectors that weren't considered weak. Picking a few cultivators to assist him with minor troubles wouldn't be an issue. The moment the students heard his words, their jaws dropped. Baekuan's lackeys were also left astonished and bewildered. Could you not do this, my brother? We are just kids playing around. Why would you escalate matters and bring out the big guns? This didn't seem very logical. The group faced each other nervously before taking a few steps back. Their taunts immediately died down as they knew that Li Luo indeed possessed the power to do so. He might have a blank palace, but he was still House Loulan's young lord. Getting a few expert resonance cultivators to bring the beat down would be as easy as breathing. Baekuan was also shocked at the series of events. Composing himself, he started to scold, "How shameless of you to use such underhanded methods." Li Luo frowned. If you aren't happy, then dispatch your Bei family's experts. Fight me. Baekuan's jaw dropped and he was left speechless. House Loulan might be filled with internal turmoil, but a skinny camel was still larger than a horse. Before the house actually fractured to pieces, the Bei family could only sneakily take a few bites. In terms of the experts from his family, he wasn't even sure if he could mobilize them. Even if he could, would they dare to take Li Luo on? He wouldn't be able to bear such a result. Thus, a sudden silence descended upon the field, the situation slightly chaotic. At the absolute peak of the tree of resonant power was a treehouse. Within the treehouse could be seen several individuals quietly observing the students squabbling. Keek. This brat from House Loulan is a little interesting. An old man with a head of white hair, dressed entirely in black and white, chuckled. This old man was the dean of Southwind Academy. He was known as Wei Shou, and he had an illustrious reputation within the Tianshu province. Threatening to bring in his family's might to deal with childish arguments isn't interesting. How could the 2 house lords of House Loulan have given birth to such a hoodlum? Another voice said. This came from a skinny male. Although he exuded a refined and cultured demeanor, his face contained an uninhibited expression of arrogance. This was the teacher of the first school, Lin Feng. He was one of the teachers who had proposed for Li Luo to be kicked out of the first school and sent to the second school. Teacher Lin Feng speaks a little too crudely. That Baekuan clearly knows that Li Luo has a blank palace, yet he still goes to find trouble for him. Truly a person of poor character, Xu Yu, who was standing beside them, retorted savagely. Lin Feng emotionlessly replied, troubles between students should be settled between themselves. Why the need to escalate the situation? Still, he was uninterested in continuing to argue with Xu Yu over this small matter. He turned his gaze towards the dean beside him. More importantly, do you remember what I previously suggested? Do you agree with what I've said? Dean Wei turned and blinked at him. What suggestion? Lin Feng seemed a little helpless before he answered, the final examination is about to arrive. Our first school does not have enough golden leaves, and we would like to request for another 5 gold leaves to be provided to our first school. I disagree. The one who raised the objection was Xu Yu. He furiously glowered at Lin Feng. Only the first and second schools had access to gold leaves, and the second school only had 10. If 5 were given, where else would they come from? Clearly, the second school. This chap was truly overreaching his boundaries. An argument ensued atop the lofty and majestic tree of resonant power. The two teachers of the first and second schools were butting heads over the distribution of gold leaves. Xu Yu, you need to understand that our first school has numerous outstanding students as a hotbed of talent. Their abilities far surpass those of the other schools, and if we were to provide better conditions, they would naturally develop even better results. They would also make better use of the resources and be able to leapfrog ahead, Lin Feng said in a deep tone. Xu Yu coldly retorted, it might be true that the first school is exceptional, but that doesn't mean that my second school is trash. Does that mean that they should not be allowed to enjoy the benefits of these gold leaves? Plus, the tree of resonant power has 50 gold leaves. Your first school already monopolizes 40 of them. How is that not enough? Lin Feng frowned. The issue isn't whether it's enough or not. It's simply about who can make best use of the resources. The students of the first school are better able to take advantage of the gold leaves. I'm not trying to target your second school, but it's just the truth of the matter. Xu Yu gave a cold smile. You are simply trying to monopolize all of South Wind Academy's resources, all to allow just a few more of your students to enter the Astral Sage College, all for the sake of your own ego and reputation. You're just trying to get yourself into the Astral Sage College the way I see it. The truth was that the Astral Sage College was not just the aim of students. Even the numerous academy's teachers treated it as their holy land. All of their efforts were directed to their goals of teaching within the Astral Sage College. This would bring them great stature and an improvement in social status. Having such a goal wasn't a bad thing. However, Xu Yu felt that Lin Feng was being too utilitarian, only focusing on his own goals and benefits. Even the act of kicking Li Luo to the second school wasn't necessary. Li Luo wasn't a bad student, he merely had a blank palace and wasn't even a hindrance. The only reason he had done so was to prove his might, to show the first school that he, who had just joined at that point, was not to be trifled with. As Lin Feng took in those scathing words, his expression changed for the worse. Xu Yu, don't be an irritating troublemaker. The rest of the teachers of South Wind Academy tried to calm the two down at this point as they continued to trade verbal barbs to prevent the situation from worsening. Dean Weisha was also left with quite a headache. The gold leaves of the tree of resonant power were limited to begin with, and every school wanted more. This was to be expected as it would provide more opportunities for their students to develop their potential. It also affected their rankings and possible promotions. Lin Feng had been pestering him for quite a while by now, and he had always chosen to buy more time. In the end, it seemed that a decision was in order today. Wei Sha stared at the numerous shadows below and then gave a command with his deep and resonant voice. The second school's gold leaves cannot be given away without reason. The fact that the first school is more illustrious is not a good reason to deprive those of the second school the opportunity to develop. If you wish to compete for gold leaves, then leave it to the students to fight for it themselves. Let's do it this way. The first school and the second school will both pick 3 students, none of them exceeding the 6th seal stage. Both parties will compete against each other. If the first school wins, then the second school will give up 5 gold leaves. If the second school wins, the first school will give up 10 gold leaves. Immediately after speaking, Lin Feng and Xu Yu both stopped arguing, their brows furrowed in deep thought. Dean Wei, could you kindly explain why the first school would have to give up 10 gold leaves if they lose? Lin Feng asked in a dissatisfied tone. Wei Sha smiled. That is because this entire situation was raised by you. Furthermore, the first school is stronger and hence has to pay a larger price. What else would give the second school the incentive to challenge you? Lin Feng remained unconvinced, but after thinking things through, he replied in the affirmative. This competition may have been restricted to the 6th seal stage, but his first school did have the advantage here. Xu Yu was a little hesitant. Even though the first school would lose 10 gold leaves, he understood that the first school was the shining star of Southwind Academy. Their students were also head and shoulders above the ones of his school. Dean Wei, our second school only has 2 individuals who have reached the 6th seal stage, Xu Shanyu said helplessly. Lin Feng smiled. You can rest assured. The students of the first school won't give you a chance to reach that tiebreaker match. Xu Shanyue's face turned black and his gaze seethed with fury. The old dean sighed and said, Don't worry so much, little Xu. If you lose, I will compensate second school next year. This arrangement will only last for this month. After hearing Dean Wei's explanation, Xu Shanyu paused to consider the situation, eventually begrudgingly nodding in agreement. It seemed that in the dean's heart, the students of first school did possess a slightly greater stature than those of the second school. Xu Shanyu knew that he couldn't fault the dean for this. This was just human nature. If he didn't favor the first school, then what else would he do? Favor the second school? I will go and make the necessary arrangements. When Xu Shanyu finished speaking, he immediately vaulted down from atop the treehouse. Lin Feng's face was full of smiles as he also went to find his students. Meanwhile, going back to the students, Bei Kuan led his lackeys away while cutting a sorry figure, completely unreconciled with how things had turned out. What was worse was that Li Luo had completely disregarded him and his anger, opting to utilize unorthodox means to deal with him. This had turned into a truly headache-inducing situation. Youths were hot-headed. Disagreements between them should be resolved with fists. Even if one was left with a bleeding head, they ought to clench their fists and just keep struggling. Who could be so shameless as to call their family thugs on a whim to settle these petty grievances? Completely shameless. Seeing the group of goons run off, the students of the second school stared at Li Luo with strange expressions. They had never expected for him to bring out such a method to deal with the provocations. This? Don't you think that was a little shameless? Jiang Qing'e couldn't find the right words as he scratched his head, speaking in a low tone. Li Luo lazily gave him a look. If they wanted to bully me for having a blank palace, can I not do the same to them? An eye for an eye? Well, that's not what I mean, Jiang Qing'e wanted to retort but couldn't put his thoughts into words, only shaking his head. This young lord was truly a little unruly. As they spoke, Xu Shanyu appeared in front of the students of the second school. He clapped his hands, signaling for all of the students to gather. Following which, he quickly explained the situation. When the students heard his words, they were incensed. This first school has gone too far. They've already taken 40 gold leaves and they still aren't satisfied? Even going so far as to snatch ours. There's no chance in this fight. Our second school only has 2 who have reached the 6th seal stage. Hi? Why don't we give up? After a brief period of fury, the mood became quite pessimistic. They understood the gravity of the situation, and even if they did manage to scrounge up another 6th seal combatant, they would still be at a relative disadvantage. Seeing the disappointed gazes of the second school students, Xu Shanyu helplessly sighed before deciding. Jiang Qing'e and Yuan Qiu, the 2 of you will be selected. I won't let you down, teacher. I will definitely not bring shame to the second school. I will let them know that the second school isn't so easily challenged. Jiang Qing'e bellowed, demonstrating his intent to battle and his hot-bloodedness. Yuan Qiu was a tall and willowy young lady. Her expression was calm as she asked, Who's the third? Xu Shanyue's eyes swept across the group of students. All who met his eyes immediately dodged and hid. No one had the confidence to stand upon the stage. In the end, he could only look at Li Luo. He might have a blank palace, but he was an expert in resonance arts. When it came to absolute combat strength, he was almost a match for Jiang Qing'e and Yuan Qiu, making him a decent candidate. All right, the last one will be Li Luo. Xu Shanyu made his decision. Don't feel pressured, and losing doesn't matter. You will be the first one up, just do your best. Once you can't hold on, you can give up. This way, you should be able to attract the opponent's resonant power, giving the others after you a better chance. Being chosen didn't really mean much to Li Luo. Furthermore, the second school only had so many students who could fight. Clearly, Xu Shanyue's intention was for him to be cannon fodder, to deplete the opponent's resonant power. Li Luo's gaze seemed to have become more complicated. He had originally wanted to keep a low profile, but it looked like the heavens wouldn't permit it. In that case, it was truly time for the hero to showcase his exceptional hidden abilities. Old Xu, you clearly don't understand what sort of existence you've picked for this role. There could truly be no one more fitting for such a critical task. Your bright ideas might lead to your face becoming even more resplendent than the sun when he impresses everyone with his power. Xu Shanyu slapped Li Luo on the shoulder, causing him to stumble. Why are you standing there in a daze? Are you scared out of your wits? All of the cool, brooding hero momentum that he had gathered up for the stage had been ruined by that one slap, almost causing him to fall face first. The news of the first school competing against the second school for their gold leaves spread. In the blink of an eye, the entire South Wind Academy had congregated amongst the upper levels of the Tree of Resonant Power, all to participate in the excitement. South Wind Academy had 4 schools. The first school was the most illustrious, the second school could be seen as the reserves. When it came to the third and fourth schools, saying that they existed to make up the numbers would be a slight exaggeration, but the truth was that they were of a lower standard. To those students, the gold leaves of the Tree of Resonant Power were something that they could only see but not touch. Just watching the first and second schools duking it would be good enough. Almost no one believed that the second school could win. On the eastern side of the Tree of Resonant Power was a flat area that consisted of numerous massive and sturdy branches coiled together. These tightly weaved branches formed a vast, wooden platform tens of meters long. It often served as an area for students to exchange pointers after cultivation and to compete against each other. Right at this moment, the 4 sides were squeezed full of people eager to watch the oncoming fight. The first school and the second school naturally found their respective places on the east and west of the platform. The mood differed significantly on each. The students on the side of the first school were full of raucous smiles and laughter. It was clear that they weren't really treating this battle as anything important. This was to be expected considering that there were limitations to the Resonant Power stage for this competition. When it came to talent, 6th Seal Resonant Masters could not even place within the top 10. This meant that the true experts of first school would not even have a hand in this. In comparison to the first school, the atmosphere in the second school was full of unease and anger. They were all from the same academy and had a good understanding of their standing within it. Even the thought of victory was something they did not believe in. Crucially, they were only hoping to not lose in a humiliating fashion. This is meaningless. What's the point of such a battle? Diffa Qing lazily stretched, her beautiful curves accentuated by the school uniform. Even her fellow female schoolmates could only stare at her in envy, while some hot-blooded guys were boiling with emotion at this sight. The fact that Diffa Qing was considered one of the golden flowers within South Wind Academy was not a title in jest. Well, this can definitely kill some time. A gentle voice wafted over. Turning her head to look over, she saw another lady walking over. She had a head of long, black hair, elegant features, and an icy, jade-like complexion. This new entrant was known as Lu Qing'e, elder sister Qing'e. Diffa Qing's eyes brightened up at this sight, immediately waving at her. Lu Qing'e was even more famous than her, and more importantly, she was someone who did not rely on appearances, but on her strength. She easily suppressed numerous geniuses within the first school. She was the poster child for first school with her looks and abilities. Many felt that Lu Qing'e would have become a legend within South Wind Academy if not for the fact that she had been overshadowed by Jiang Qing'e's radiance. Hence, if Diffa Qing's #1 idol was Jiang Qing'e, Lu Qing'e was second. These 2 goddesses were South Wind Academy's most exceptional beauties. Now that they were sitting together, they created a soul-stirring scene for all those who glanced at them. Gradually, people started to gather around them. Doesn't elder sister Qing'e deign to participate in such affairs normally? Diffa Qing asked curiously. With a slight smile, she replied, I'm just here to have a casual look. Her beautiful eyes were focused in the direction of the second school before she continued, "You mentioned that the second school will dispatch 3 fighters." Xia Qing'e replied, unperturbed, "The second school only has Jiao Qing'e and Yuan Qiu who have reached the 6th seal stage. Plus, they've only just reached that point." "Who is the third one, then?" Lu Qing'e asked. Xia Qing'e paused for a bit, unsure of how to reply. Instead, someone in the crowd spoke up. "It's most likely going to be Li Luo. He may have a blank palace, but his resonance arts are the best. If one were to stretch it, he could barely compete against 5th seal stage cultivators." With Lu Qing'e's appearance, some of the most elite students of the first school who were previously uninterested in the competition had muddled over. The one who spoke was a heroic-looking and tall youth. Xia Qing'e batted him an eye and ridiculed him. "So it's you, Song Yunfeng. Seems like you've decided to participate in the festivities. What sort of ulterior motives do you have?" Song Yunfeng was also exceptionally famous within Southwind Academy. In terms of strength, he was on par with Lu Qing'e. Furthermore, he came from the Song family, one of the 3 largest families in the Jiangsu province. Him liking Lu Qing'e was not a secret, and he had never tried to hide it. Facing Xia Qing'e's inquisitive questions, he gave a warm smile and did not retort. Instead, his gaze fell upon Lu Qing'e's beautiful and elegant face. Even in the face of his passionate gaze, Lu Qing'e's expression was unchanging. She merely politely returned it with a greeting smile. Seeing Lu Qing'e's passive response, Xia Qing'e immediately steered the conversation back to where it was originally. "If the second school dispatches Li Luo, it's just courting humiliation. The 3 6th seal cultivators our first school has picked are well-renowned." Song Yunfeng smiled and got straight to the point. "Do you still think the second school bears any hope of winning? They are just here to parade around." "You're probably right." Xia Qing'e laughed lightly. Lu Qing'e, on the other hand, was looking towards the field, staring at Li Luo's silhouette. For some reason, she could feel that the Li Luo here today didn't seem the same as before. Suddenly, she interjected with a little smile. "I feel that may not be the case." Once she spoke, Xia Qing'e, Song Yunfeng, and all the other students of the first school were a little taken aback. Song Yunfeng followed Lu Qing'e's gaze and also noticed Li Luo. Seeing her faintly smiling at Li Luo brought a sense of unease to his heart. "Qing'e, this is no longer the past," Song Yunfeng pointed out with good intentions. Yet she did not reply, a non-committal smile on her face. On the other hand, Song Yunfeng felt absolutely furious deep down upon seeing that smile, similarly hatefully glancing towards Li Luo with a cold expression on his face. This scumbag had already fallen into the dumps. Why did his influence still linger on like some sort of undeparted spirit? Amidst the rising fervor of the audience, the 3 contestants from the second school walked up. Unsurprisingly, they were Li Luo, Jiao Qing'e, and Yuan Qiu. 3 from the first school also made their way forward. One of them was the recently met Bei Kun. The other 2 were also particularly famous individuals at the 6th seal stage. "So what do you plan to do now, Li Luo? Will you just continue to spout threats?" Bei Kun stared daggers at Li Luo, a sarcastic grin hanging on his face. He had first brought people to find trouble for Li Luo, only to be repelled by Li Luo's shameless tactics. At least right now, Li Luo could no longer do so. This was a true competition of might. If he dared to bring up the threats he had previously made, he would only bring scorn and humiliation upon himself. Even the academy would punish him in the spirit of fairness. Li Luo did not bother with him but instead waved to Jiao Qing'e and Yuan Qiu. "Well, I will head up first." Jiao Qing'e hurriedly said, "Be careful. If you can't take it, just give up. It would be too great a loss if your handsome face were ruined." Li Luo replied with a thumbs up. "Brother has foresight." Yuan Qiu could only lightly sigh, a listless expression on her face. It was clear that she did not have the confidence her fellow teammates had. Under the scrutiny of the crowd, Li Luo entered the stage before picking a metal staff from the weapons rack, dragging it along the floor. This action caused the staff to scratch against the platform, causing ear-grating and piercing sounds. On the other hand, the audience, seeing that Li Luo had taken the initiative to go up first, erupted into an uproar. The second school intends for Li Luo to be the vanguard. They want him to be cannon fodder. Ha ha, this is interesting. Li Luo was kicked out of the first school and now he's going to fight them. If he manages to win, that would make for an interesting sight. What are you dreaming about? He's a natural blank palace. Even if he has amazing resonance arts, how can he possibly beat someone at the sixth seal? Ha ha, I'm just joking. I'm trying to liven up the atmosphere. Li Luo's appearance had incited a lot of interest and discussion amongst the audience. He was also somewhat of a legend within Southwind Academy. Most importantly, it was rumored that Jiang Qing'e had returned to the city of Southwind last week, even picking him up from school. This very action incited both envy and massive hatred from everyone around. With this in mind, everyone was hoping that Li Luo would receive a walloping. Bei Kuan's arms were crossed, a playful look in his eye as he looked at Li Luo. Following which, he turned and spoke to the other two behind him. Toy with him a bit, Liu Yang. Although he truly wanted to have a bout with Li Luo, he felt that this stage wasn't grand enough. Hence, he wanted to let the others build up the excitement. The youth known as Liu Yang was tall and large. He felt a little dissatisfied at Bei Kuan's words. The audience here was large and he wanted to properly showcase his talents. Instead, he was being dispatched to handle the cannon fodder, truly a loss of face. Bei Kuan, noticing his dissatisfaction, said dryly, "If you take him out in a move or two, can't you just continue to take on the next opponent? If you're hardy enough, you might even be able to sweep all three of them." True, Liu Yang nodded. He similarly casually walked up the stage, picking up a metal spear along the way. "Li Luo. Please have mercy on me," he joked. Li Luo grasped his metal staff, his expression unchanging as he faced him. At this moment, at a point high above the stage, the old dean nodded. Xu Shanyu and Lin Feng saw the signal and both exclaimed, "Begin." Once the words resounded, Liu Yang and Li Luo shot towards each other. Whilst they approached each other, Liu Yang stared at that opposing shadow and couldn't help but to give a large guffaw. "Your speed is a little." Peng. Just as he was about to speak, Li Luo, who was in front of him, executed a quick footwork. His toes suddenly pushed off against the ground, sending his entire body soaring forth like an eagle. In the blink of an eye, a cloud of dust was created behind him. Liu Yang's laughter could barely escape his mouth before Li Luo executed a quick maneuver, appearing directly in front of him. But it wasn't just Li Luo that appeared in front of him, there was a metal staff splitting the air, screaming towards him with utmost speed. Liu Yang had virtually no time to react, but through his own conditioned reflexes, managed to summon some resonant power to protect his chest. Li Luo's sudden increase in speed had frightened everyone. He did not have resonant power and limited strength as a result, but so long as Liu Yang circulated his resonant power to defend against his move, he would be able to counterattack and make Li Luo pay a price for his actions. As Liu Yang was thinking of that, the metal staff, akin to a black python, smashed downwards onto his chest. Peng! When that dull thud resonated, grievous pain flooded through Liu Yang's chest. Horror surged through him at this moment as the resonant power circulating through his chest was smashed apart by Li Luo's blow. After which, he was sent flying, heavily crashing out of the stage, leaving behind a trail on the ground. The crowd turned silent as everyone attempted to register what had just happened. Immediately after, exhilarated cheers could be heard from everyone. The students of the first school were blankly staring at the pain-racked Liu Yang, who had been batted out of the stage like a pinball, all at a complete loss. Just what had happened? Why was the one sent flying not Li Luo? Some of them even doubted their eyes, looking towards the stage. Li Luo, on the other hand, was still in the same stance which he had struck Liu Yang in, gracefully looking at Liu Yang below. He seemed so cool at this moment that even his ashamed opponents had a look of idolatry on their faces. What were you going to say? My speed is a little what? This video will end here.